bloopers.
Wonderful bloopers.
Wonderful bloopers with hair blowing in the background. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Linguistic Isle podcast, and today I have a very, very special guest. I know her as Pat, you might know her as Carmencita. I'm gonna let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Carmencita Patricia Lamar. Like Greta said, my friends and family grew up calling me Pat. Carmencita is my government name, so that's what my colleagues call me by. I'm from St. Maarten, born and raised, and I left here to go to the Netherlands to pursue my studies. And after I was done taking in what Europe had to offer me, I came back home.
Fantastic. So today we're going to learn more about her experience living in the Netherlands and returning to St. Maarten. But first we're going to get to know her, having a word with a wordie. So this is like our lightning round section. I'm going to ask you, I think, 5 questions, and you just answer as honestly and as quickly as you can.
All right.
So, Pat, what's your mother tongue?
English.
How many languages do you speak?
2.
What are they?
English and Dutch.
Are you familiar with the term code switching?
Yes.
When do you code switch?
When I don't want people to understand what I'm saying.
Can you tell us a funny story where you did not code switch, or where there was some misinterpretation because of code switching?
Well, this is not a story of code switching, but just how we use language. I remember I was in the Netherlands, a school friend came to visit me, and I saw another friend of mine, from St. Maarten. And she was saying to me, hey, I talked to my sister. She said that you're going home for the summer, and we started talking. Actually, she said you were going home. So we had that conversation about going home and so forth and so forth. And when we were finished, he turned to me and he said, but I thought you just came from home. I thought we were going, to Utrecht. What did she mean you were going home? I said, well, when we say we're going home, we mean we're going back home to St. Maarten. So that was one of those examples where we use language in different ways.
Exactly.
He spoke English well, but he did not understand what I meant
when you said home.
I was going home.
That's so true. And no matter where we are, home, it always refers to...
Exactly.
That's great. What is your favorite quote?
Don't poke the bear.
Don't poke the bear. Okay.
Don't poke
you have
the
to give
bear.
us a little bit more explanation with that. Why is that your favorite quote? Where did this come from? Don't poke the bear.
Don't poke the bear. Okay. Where did it come from? How did it become my favorite quote?
Yes. Because this is new. This is a new one for me.
I think a lot of people, we see memes, we see commentary a lot of times online about persons pushing the boundaries with others and then being upset when the person reacts. Then being, that's not professional, that's not Christian, like, a lady shouldn't carry herself like that, but you poke the bear. So my favorite quote is don't poke the bear, don't push an agenda, and then when you get the results of what you pushed, of what you wanted, complain about it after.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think I need to start using that, don't poke the bear. And now tell us one word that describes you.
Oxymoron.
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 Wow. Do you want to give some explanation to that? I totally understand why that fits you, but just so that the audience can get it. Oxymoron.
I think a lot of people, people see it from both sides. Every negative or positive thing someone says about you is true. I often tell people I'm antisocial, and everyone is like, that's not true. You're so, you're so polite, you're so social, you talk to everyone. Yeah, that's true, but I don't want anyone in my surroundings. I'm antisocial. With the code switching, like you mentioned, I can be very correct in my English. I speak standard English. I speak the Queen's English. And then I can just as quickly turn over to our colloquial English. So I'm an oxymoron. You get both sides. And in meeting new people, I tend to want to present my worst side first so that they're always familiar with what a worst case scenario looks like, that it's not a situation of, I didn't know you were like that. Yeah, you did. You forgot. You forgot. But yes, an oxymoron.
Okay, so we're going to get to know more about this oxymoron in part 2. Okay, so we're ready for part 2. And I would like you, Pat, to tell us your history with Dutch, or learning the Dutch language.
My first introduction to Dutch was during primary school. I believe in the 3rd grade of MAC, Methodist Agoghic Center, we started learning Dutch. Dutch was a subject. It is a language, but it wasn't taught as a language. It was more taught as a subject. You learned some words, the translation for the words, a bit of vocabulary here and there, more of the conjugation of verbs, but not really how to speak the language. Then went on to secondary school, and there again it was a subject and an elective at that, which meant that we could have chosen not to take Dutch. And quite a few of us did not take Dutch as an elective. I did, so I had Dutch and Spanish as my languages, but more energy was put into Spanish. Sadly, a lot of us do not see Dutch as a very important language to learn because our first language is English. English is spoken the world over, so why learn Dutch? However, I did go to the Netherlands to study, so I needed to learn Dutch, and that was not something that was anticipated in my primary or secondary academic life. And once I got to the Netherlands, I needed to learn the language. I didn't learn it initially either, and that's where we got the oxymoron, the you know better, but still you do something else. I remembered I enrolled for a Dutch language program. I started the program, I paid for the program, and I was on a bus riding and with classmates, and this classmate, Dutch classmate, said to me, "Je bent van de Nederlandse Antilles, je moet Nederlands spreken. So you're from the Netherlands Antilles, you have to speak Dutch." I said, "Excuse me?" When the king and queen comes to visit St. Maarten, and this was Queen Beatrice at the time, she speaks English. So no, I don't need to learn Dutch. And that was it. I was done. That was it. I was done. I finished my first degree in marketing management, and I went on to study law. Yeah, then you need to learn Dutch.
It was all going well. Then it was
Then it was like, okay, all right, the jig is up. Time to immerse yourself in the language, and that's when I started really immersing myself into the language, into the culture, and learning the language.
Okay, so many questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
So first of all, was there any particular reason you decided to study in the Netherlands?
Financial reasons.
Financial reasons, much more affordable, right?
It's much more affordable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what, maybe you were going to go in that direction, but what method did you use to learn Dutch here up there in Holland?
While I was there, again, I immersed myself into it. I signed up for a program where, I was in school 5 days a week. I did it in school. I also got a job in one of those environments where they don't really speak English, so you're forced to speak the language. And that's how I went about doing it. I got my NT2 diploma, so Dutch is a second language diploma. So I did everything I needed to do to make sure I was ready to go into a law program in the Dutch language.
That's awesome. It might come up later, but I'll ask it now. At the time when you went to study, did you think, learning Dutch, this would be helpful for me when I come back to St. Maarten? Or was that just nowhere in your mind?
I knew I wanted to study law. So I knew I would have had to learn the language. And our legal system on St. Maarten is Dutch. So I knew I would have had to learn it. But if there was any part of me that thought that it's needed for lifestyle in St. Maarten, no.
Okay. What was your biggest struggle with learning Dutch as an adult? Because I would say, you were an adult.
I was an adult.
You was an adult.
The biggest struggle, I think, is spoken language versus written language. I learned Dutch as an adult. When you learn a language, usually, when it's your mother tongue, you learn all the colloquialisms, all the slangs and everything else. And when you learn it in a formal setting, you learn the formal language.
Right.
So I remember learning that language and speaking it at work, and then my colleagues would be like, "Carmencita, that's not what we say."
You wouldn't say it like that. Oh, this is so interesting.
Yeah, but that's what it is. Yeah, we know how you write it, but that's not what we say. So that's what it was, learning the difference between what's formal and what's commonly used.
Wow, that's really interesting. Did you find it helpful that you had taken Dutch as a foreign language when you were younger?
No.
Not at all. Wow.
Not at all.
Explain that. Tell me more about that.
Again, if all you're learning and all that I learned then, I'm sure that there are students out there that put their heart and soul into Dutch as a foreign language during their secondary years, and so they're up to par. But for me, my learning experience was conjugation, vocabulary, and that was it. That doesn't help you learn how to string sentences together, learn how to have discussions about politics or cultural differences. It doesn't help you with that. I knew the basics, you know. Goedemorgen, goedemiddag, hoe gaat het met je?
Yeah.
You can't really have a full conversation based on those words. So, no, it didn't help.
It was not helpful.
No.
Wow. And did you find, because you went to like a Dutch program, was their method of teaching the language different?
Yes, you know.
Or was it just because you were in the environment that there was more Dutch?
It was different in the sense of the only thing you heard was Dutch.
Right.
And I've also gone to France to learn French and Spain to learn Spanish. And what does help is if you're in a classroom environment where you can only speak that language. There were no ifs, ands, or buts. You had to speak Dutch. So whether or not you struggle, whether or not your vocabulary was a little bit off, you needed to fight your way through the language to put together your thoughts and to present your thoughts. So I do think that that method of learning, immersion learning, works better than just learning the translations of languages.
I agree with you. So much to say, but we got to get through the question. So if you could change the language learning you received, how would you have changed it?
Immersion learning. I think if somehow in the curriculums we are allowed to go away for a semester abroad and to do the language studies there, I think that would help immensely in how quickly we're able to develop a language, pick up on a language, and also utilize the language.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything, because you mentioned, so that sounds like university level, but was there anything you would change, like from high school, elementary school, primary school?
Elementary school, there's little to change, but high school, I think there is definitely possibilities of doing a semester abroad.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think that we should, make the assumption that that's not possible. You have different programs. You have the Erasmus Plus programs, which supports the interaction between young people and cultural differences. So there are possibilities to develop programs that would allow those things to happen. Maybe a summer program, 4 or 5 weeks for summer. You go there, you learn the language, you learn the culture, you learn about the place. Because moving to the Netherlands as well, it's always a culture shock because despite what is told to us during the preparation program, you haven't lived it.
Yeah.
So I think having those programs, a structured program, everyone who's interested in going to the Netherlands, okay, there's a 4-week program for the summer, you can go immerse yourself and really figure out, is this an environment I want to be in? Is this for me, or should I be in another environment?
It's good, and it kind of segues to my next question. You correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you work with the group SS? Can't remember the name, but the group that helps St. Martin students when they come to Holland?
I didn't. I am a part of Unified St. Martin Connection.
Okay, maybe that's the one I'm thinking
USC, and a couple years ago we participated in the introduction program for students that were going to the Netherlands, but I wasn't a part of the original SSNA or SSS of that group.
But the group you were a part with, were you able to I don't want to say mentor, but give advice to students or help students with that transition as they came to Holland? And is there anything you think students need to do more to embrace Dutch in this transition to the Netherlands?
When I participated in that program, I was already on St. Martin. And the program is a 2-part program. It starts in St. Martin, introducing the students to what life in the Netherlands is like. And then when they get there, we also at that time continued with that introduction, that exposure to the culture, to the lifestyle. USC has different activities that it conducts with students. There's a Facebook page. It's a network of students from St. Martin, young professionals and students that can come together, exchange ideas. So it's a support system in an environment where we previously did not have a support system. Unlike the US, where you have different college bodies that's there to support you, when you go to the Netherlands, you're pretty much on your own. So having established USC, we now have a place where students from St. Martin can go, not only from St. Martin, but from the Dutch Caribbean can go and have contact with each other and have that network.
So that really helps them with transitioning to, I guess, the way of life, like living, stuff like that, would you say?
It gives you something familiar.
Yeah.
It gives you something to call home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're in an environment where there's nothing that resembles home and you don't have anyone to rely on, anyone that can understand what you're feeling or what you're going through, it makes it harder
Yeah,
to
for
make it
sure.
through that process. So I think it creates that feeling of being home.
That's nice. So now going back to the language aspect, do you think a lot of students have difficulty because of the language, or it's mostly just being far away from home and missing these things that you're used to, as you're saying?
I think it's both. I mean, how do you form friendships? How do you form networks? How do you make connections if you can't speak the language? Bear in mind, there are a lot of Dutch people who speak English, and they speak English well.
Mm-hmm.
But you go into a government office and they're not, their first instinct isn't to speak English.
Of
Their
course.
first instinct is to speak Dutch.
Yeah, as should be, I think.
As should be.
Yeah.
You go to the market, the first instinct is to speak Dutch and not to speak English. So I think it's both. It's being far away and not being able to communicate or express yourself in a way that you know that you're heard.
And why do you think that is? Because that's something I've observed as well. Too many Dutch people speak English at a pretty good level. Because that's one of the things that I want to delve more into is, you know, how can we be more like that? Whereas even if English is our first language, if students are learning Dutch, that they can speak Dutch at least at a comparative level that you can get around comfortably. But there's there's a lot of difficulty with it and a lot of restraint from it. What can we do differently?
If there's no immediate interest or need to do something, it's not done. And
yeah,
I believe that as well. People tell me you don't change. I'm like, change is an evolutionary process. If there's no reason to do it, why should I?
Yeah,
so
that's
if
it.
there's no reason to learn the language, why should you?
That's it. I literally feel that is, I don't want to call it the problem, but it's the reality.
It's the reason.
If there is no motivation inwardly or outwardly, so because maybe I don't like something, but it's like, man, but if I want to go there by that office, I don't have to speak Dutch. There's nothing in St. Maarten that forces
That
you
triggers
that
you
you have to
to do
speak
it.
Dutch. So
I mean, maybe if we do stuff,
why do I have to do that?
maybe if we do stuff like spelling bees or different competitions, speech competitions, for example.
I like that. I actually
That
think
will
that this
work.
would be a good idea. I feel like there needs to be a I don't know, like a little network of something where that there can be support for people who do want to learn the language or improve the language. And you know, because I can remember that there were some high schoolers who were even in academy that wanted to take advanced Dutch because they knew they were going to Holland and wanted to prep themselves in that way. But you know, I wonder where can you go if you want to. It's almost like you have to create it for yourself, this way of growing in this language, because there are not a lot of outlets.
Well, there are a couple Dutch programs offered on the island. I know that, but where do we use it outside of the classroom setting? I'm not sure.
Can you tell me more about those Dutch programs? Is it like, because I see like they're like learn Dutch, like classes at centers and stuff like that. But I guess I'm more looking for like something where every day, if you want to practice everyday situations, so you're not back in a classroom setting, but
I don't think that exists yet. I don't know. Maybe it does and we're just not aware. But I don't know that it exists.
Okay.
But it would be something great that we can create.
This is good. Okay, we're gonna pause and we'll come back for round 3.